Hello and welcome to the Bhagavatam. We have been talking about Sri Ram, Bhagavan, the incarnation of Vishnu, who appeared 14,000 years ago and is recorded in the Vedas as being the prime example of a saintly king, a raja-rishi. Someone who Raja means king and Rishi means one who is saintly, highly evolved. And he strived to establish Dharma. So what is Dharma? I think that's a good place to start. Dharma comes from the Sanskrit word, the Sanskrit dhatu or root, dhru, which means that which supports. So what does it support? That which supports the eternal and inherent nature of reality. Let's say that again. The eternal and inherent nature of reality. That which is essential and irreplaceable, the essential and irreplaceable traits or qualities. So essentially, what are your essential traits and qualities? Right? Or what is the nature of something? Like water is wet, fire is hot and gives out light. That's its dharma. It's essential and irreplaceable traits or qualities. Similarly, we too have our own essential and irreplaceable traits and qualities. We too have a particular nature. And very often when we live by our nature, it makes a big difference versus if we don't. If we live by our true nature, our talents, our gifts, the things that we do effortlessly, then life is very smooth sailing, enjoyable, pleasurable, even though there are many challenges in it. On the other hand, if we don't live according to our nature, we don't live according to our talents, our gifts, our true nature, then what happens is life becomes a struggle. Life becomes hard. It becomes an effort. And we feel very frustrated. I'll give my own example. For many years, I tried to be an entrepreneur. And that didn't work well for me. I mean, I loved creating different ideas. I loved, coming up with wonderful concepts. I was great at training my teams. But the actual nitty-gritty of having to deal with things was a pain. And it was only back in my 40s when someone pointed it out to me. They said, you seem to spend most of your time talking to people about their problems and their issues. You spend a lot of time teaching and coaching. Maybe that's what you should be doing. And that was a light bulb moment. I didn't even think about it. No one ever mentioned it. No one thought about it. And suddenly my whole life changed from that moment onwards. So similarly, all of us have a particular nature, a particular set of qualities. Your body has a certain dharma. Of course, at the basic level, you might say it is to eat, to digest, to move. But there's a deeper dharma even within your body. If you look at it, the food you eat must be aligned with the nature of your body. Think about it. Your body is living, and therefore it needs living foods. Your body has 70% water, so most of your diet needs to be foods that are juicy and moist and fresh. Let's say a cucumber, let's say fruit, something like that, or zucchini, but not things that are dead, like meat, like fish, like eggs. They're dead things aren't good food for the body, and it's getting proven more and more so. So this is what's called a sattvic diet. These foods promote mental and spiritual wellness. And what does that mean? It leads to peace, kindness, clarity. And personally, I've been following such diet, and I find it extremely helpful. It's kept me looking young, feeling great. But this is when you're starting to follow the nature of your body. Similarly, the mind has its own dharma. The mind can be like a crazy dog. It must be trained and focused. If we don't do that, it's going to be problematic for us. If we don't understand that the mind needs leadership, it needs someone to be in charge of it, If we don't understand that fundamental concept, that fundamental idea, then what's going to happen is the mind is going to dominate you, bully you, push you around, judge you, criticize you, and make your life miserable. No matter how much you have, no matter how wonderful and beautiful you look, it doesn't matter. You're miserable on the inside, depressed, anxious, fearful. It's horrible. So we must know how to turn our mind on and off. For this, you need to practice meditation. So there are very specific things on the dharmic path that study the nature of reality and then what needs to be done to live in harmony with reality, to support the nature of reality. Similarly, if you think about the dharmic family, the members of the family need to be there supporting each other, understanding each other, accepting each other, helping each other develop to their highest potential. It's not just about meeting the basic needs of food. Oh, I'm a provider and I just take care of my family. No, it's not just that. There's a lot more to it. If you're going to be in a family, you need to know that there is a dharma that you have. Similarly, there's a social dharma. These are the codes for society that support harmony, law, order, well-being, and prosperity for everyone. A dharmic society is a perfect society and in many ways is better than capitalism, communism, socialism, etc. To uphold dharma requires dharmic leaders. And such leaders are called raja-rishis. Raja-rishi means a raja, or king, and a rishi, a wise, enlightened ruler. And it also requires Brahmins, or wise and learned priests, who can guide society and its leaders. So Ram was not only the Supreme Being incarnated to establish Dharma, he was also the ideal ruler or dharmic king. You see, the Supreme Being or God incarnates from time to time. Now, such incarnations are not whimsical. It's not that anybody can say, hey, you know what, I'm God incarnate this time around and, recognize me, bow to me, and follow me. No, there's a lot of people who've tried that gimmick and it doesn't work. They've proven to be frauds, they've proven to be exploiting other people, and they've proven to be real cheaters in every which way you can think of. When the Supreme Being incarnates, it is predicted thousands of years in advance. Just like when the president comes to visit another country, it's not something random. It's something that has well planned. And it's there on the books and the agenda. There are the whole meetings and everything and all the preparation. All the people are going to come in advance. All that is in place. And then the ruler, that president of the country arrives. So similarly, when God incarnates, he comes with a purpose to establish Dharma. And when Ram came, he came as that ideal ruler, a dharmic king. And he came to this world not only for that, but also to eliminate powerful kings such as Ravan who were harassing the people on earth. So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. I descend millennium after millennium to annihilate the miscreants and establish the principles of Dharma. And this was an incarnation of the divine that appeared 14,000 years ago. Then Krishna appeared 5,000 years ago. So to that end, they perform what is called a lila, a grand epic narrative. And these epic narratives are how we remember them for thousands of years. And they inspire us to this day to be a better human being, to live a godly life. And they give us guidelines. It's not like the modern day, new age spirituality where anything goes. You come up with the latest book, a bestseller, and suddenly, well, that's the way that spirituality is. No. Dharmic spirituality has been established for thousands of years. It's been tried, tested, and proven. People have actually become enlightened. Somebody recently asked me, what's an enlightened person? And I had to say, an enlightened person is not somebody who's just suddenly seen a bunch of colors or had some kind of an episode where they've, think that they can feel one with the universe. That's not being enlightened. That's just having a moment in time where you got a glimpse of the ultimate nature of reality. You just got a preview. That was all. That doesn't make you enlightened. An enlightened being is one who has become aligned with their true self. Their soul and their external mind, body, organism are now as one. To be enlightened is also not to be one with the divine, to be one with God. Thy wilt be done, being in alignment with the will of the divine. Most enlightened people aren't in this category at all. And it shows not just by someone claiming it, but by specific characteristics that the Bhagavad Gita actually talks about. What are the characteristics of an enlightened being? But that's not the topic of today, so I'm going to move on to our main thing, which is the whole history of Ram, the itihasa. And in this, we're going to learn about so many things that happened in the time of Ram. In fact, if you haven't watched the earlier episode, please do so, because that lays the groundwork. And that's from last week, and you'll find it on my YouTube channel as well as on Instagram. You'll be able to follow with that. So anyway, you've come in right in the middle of the story, and it is an exciting one. And this is itihasya, which means histories. So let's get started. So in the previous episode, we had spoken about how Ram was to become the king. And just before his coronation, due to the treachery of his stepmother, he was exiled to the forest for 14 years. That's a harsh one. He had just got married, and his wife and brother accompanied him. His brother Bharat, another brother, ruled on his behalf. He refused to sit on the throne. His mother had tried to get the throne for her son, Bharat. But Bharat said, no way. No way. Ram is my elder brother, is the rightful heir to the throne. He is the worthy one. He is the one who deserves to be there. And his mother had done this whole trick to get her son onto the throne, and Bharat refused. So he actually sat below the throne, placed Ram's shoes on the throne, and ruled on his behalf. Now, while Ram was in the forest, the Asura, or demon, known as Ravan, kidnapped Ram's wife, Sita. Ram was devastated. Sita and Ram are the eternal masculine and feminine. They are the eternal lovers. They are the eternal soul love. Right? If you ever talked about twin flames and soul loves, well, this is the source of that. So finally, Ram found out where she was. She was taken away thousands of miles away from where, Ravan had taken her on. They had airplanes in those days, so it was a viman that he had taken her on. And Ram, in all his desperation, found the assistance of the Vanar army. See, remember, he was no longer a prince or a king. He didn't have the support of his armies back home. So he found what's called the Vanar army. Many people mistake the Vanars for being monkeys, but they were not. They were like half man, half monkey. Very advanced species, very intelligent, and at the same time very capable of warfare. Now together, they built a bridge across the ocean. And this bridge was no ordinary bridge, because the rocks that they had to put into the ocean that would actually form the bridge would just sink. So then ultimately they began to write the name of Ram on the bricks, and then the bricks began to float. So with that, they built what's called the Ram Setu. It's called Adam's Bridge now by modern day researchers. And this stretches from the tip of India, Rameshwaram, to Sri Lanka. It's now under water, but it has been found. When the bridge was ready, Ram, Lakshman, accompanied by the Vanar army, crossed into Ravan's kingdom and began to wreak havoc. Just to kind of make this a little more interesting, let's throw in some pictures so you guys get to see a bit of what that looked like. Some of you on Instagram might see only portions of the picture. I'm so sorry for that. It's not possible to show the same way as in YouTube, but if you're ever able to follow up on YouTube, I'd love to have you watch this on YouTube as well. So here they are crossing over to Sri Lanka. And then they began to wreak havoc over there. Major battle started. So the soldiers of Sri Ramchandra killed Ravan's soldiers in this battle because Ravan had lost all good fortune and had been condemned by the anger of Mother Sita. Seeing his soldiers defeated, Ravan became very angry. He mounted his airplane and began to shower sharp arrows at Sri Ram, who was seated on an effulgent chariot presented by Matali, the chariot driver of Indra. Now I need to tell you a little something about Ravan. Ravan was actually a very wise, very evolved, very powerful being with tremendous mystical powers. He had performed all kinds of yogic sadhana. And with those yogic practices, which are not the kind of yoga you do right now in yoga studios, but which involve years and years of practice in the forest, of deep meditation, of deep trance, he had received many, many blessings. And with those blessings, he had become almost undefeatable in war. At the same time, he was a very evil person. He was very harmful to others, as you notice, just by his kidnapping of Sita. But he had done that with many women before and raped them. And finally, he'd been cursed that if he did that ever again, he would die. So that's why he did not try to rape Sita. But he would have if he could have. Yeah. So he had tremendous abilities and was very, very powerful. Here are some more pictures of Ravan. And some people think of him as just a really good guy, really wise, really enlightened, really special, and who just kind of got waylaid by lust and greed and so on. But hey, those are the very signs of one's downfall. And so finally the battle began between Ravan and Ram. Ram said to Ravan, "You are the most abominable." You are the most abominable of man-eaters. So Rakshasas, he was a Rakshas, and those were often cannibalistic man-eaters. Indeed, you are like their stool. You resemble a dog, for as a dog steals eatables from the kitchen in the absence of the householder, in my absence you kidnap my wife Sita. Therefore, as Yamaraj, the Lord of Death, punishes sinful men, I shall punish you. You are the most abominable, sinful, and shameless. Today, therefore, I, whose attempt never fails, shall punish you. Ram then fired an arrow which pierced Ravan's heart like a thunderbolt. Ravan, vomiting blood from his 10 mouths, fell from his airplane. Now, it is said that Ravan had 10 heads. I'm not sure if that was literal. I think many of us have many heads inside us, many voices, many, personalities that talk to us and tell us all kinds of things. And then there are times when we behave in ways that are not normal to us, and we become something other than who we are. So in that sense, yes, we have many heads. I don't know if Ravan's heads were literal or metaphorical, but they say he had 10 heads. And again, remember, he was a mystic. So as a mystic, they develop abilities that you and I do not have. They develop powers. They develop all kinds of siddhis, as they are called in Sanskrit, which allow them to do things that are thought of as inconceivable today, but which, back then, if we showed them the kind of technologies we have developed, they'd say this is inconceivable, just as much as we might say the technologies they had developed were inconceivable as well. The difference is this: the technologies they developed back then were about developing the human potential. We have been developing the potential of matter, material potential. How do you play with matter, create silicon, create all kinds of chips and things like that, and microchips and what have you, computer chips. And then from that, we've been able to manipulate matter in such a way that we can make incredible things happen. They were doing that within themselves. The same kind of technology development, but in a whole different context. We, by not developing the human being, have created a bunch of humans that have no control over their mind, over their senses, over their bodies. They just do what they do, say what they say, behave the way they behave, and they're often quite self-righteous about it. They think they're just God's gift to mankind, but in fact they're not. They're quite decrepit, decadent, and messed up. But that's a topic for some other time. Anyway, all the women whose husbands had fallen in battle came out of Lanka, crying piteously in voices appealing to everyone. Mandodari, the wife of Ravan, said to her dead husband, "O greatly fortunate one." Why was he fortunate? Because he had so much power, so much fame, so much of everything. She says, "You came under the influence of lusty desires, and therefore you could not understand the influence of Mother Sita." Sita is Ram's wife, and he kidnapped her. "Now, because of her curse, you have been killed by Ram. Because of you, the state of Lanka, and also we ourselves, have no protector. By your deeds, you have made your body fit to be eaten by vultures, and your soul fit to go to hell." Ram found Sita sitting in a small cottage beneath a tree. She was lean and thin. Being aggrieved because of separation from him, Sita was exceedingly happy to see her beloved Ram, and her lotus-like mouth showed her joy. Ram then gave Vibhishan, the pious brother of Ravan and the devotee of Ram, the power to rule the Rakshas population of Lanka. Now, at this point, they headed back on what is, again, I'll bring that up again, a Viman. And this is a beautiful picture of a Viman, done in a very artistic way. I'm not sure that's how they looked, but that's the artist's rendition. And that's a more classical rendition of Ram and Sita, accompanied by Hanuman, Sugriva, his brother Lakshman. And that's them returning to the capital, Ayodhya, Ram's capital. Perhaps we're jumping ahead in the story here. The period for exile by living in the forest had ended. Sita and Ram boarded an airplane decorated with flowers and accompanied by his brother Lakshman as well as Hanuman and Sugriva. They then returned to Ayodhya. Now again, who is Hanuman, who is Lakshman, all that, you need to refer to the earlier episode. It would be too complicated for me to get into it now. When Ram returned to his capital Ayodhya, he was greeted on the road by the princely order, who showered him with beautiful fragrant flowers. Ram heard that in his absence, his brother Bharat was eating barley cooked in the urine of a cow, covering his body with the bark of trees, wearing matted locks of hair, and lying on the mattress of grass. The most merciful Ram was very, very saddened by this. Bharat was a prince. His mother had wanted him to be the king, but instead he had performed all these austerities and refused. He said, if my brother Ram is living in the forest, then I too will live as if I'm in the forest. Ram has insisted that I rule the kingdom on his behalf. I'm following my brother's command, but I will not enjoy the luxuries of palace life until he returns. So on hearing of his elder brother Ram's return, Bharat took upon his own head Ram's wooden shoes. So remember when Ram refused to come back from the forest, Bharat had taken Ram's shoes and put them on his throne, on the throne of Ayodhya, and then ruled in his place. So now Bharat came back with those very shoes from his camp at Nandigram, and he was accompanied by ministers, priests, and other respectable citizens. Professional musicians played pleasing musical sounds, and learned Brahmins chanted Vedic hymns. There were soldiers bedecked with golden armor, servants bearing betel nut, and many well-known and beautiful prostitutes. Many servants followed on foot, bearing an umbrella, whisks, different grades of precious jewels, and other paraphernalia befitting a royal reception. Accompanied in this way, Bharat, his heart softened in ecstasy and his eyes full of tears, approached his elder brother Ram and fell at his lotus feet with great ecstatic love. This is a dharmic family. This is not a family that is motivated by greed, by power, by fame. No, they are motivated by that which is right, that which is their true dharmic nature. Bharat then offered the wooden shoes to Ram and stood with folded hands. The two brothers then embraced for a long time, bathing each other with their tears. So when the divine, the supreme being, comes to this earth, he exhibits all the symptoms of a human being. And that's very hard to understand. We think that God's got to be some mystical, and yes, he does all the mystical things as well. Ram could have, with one flick of his finger, killed Ravan. He didn't need to engage in this battle. He didn't need to have the Vanar Sena, so-called monkeys, build a bridge across to Lanka. He could have just flown across, or even from where he was sitting, he could just flick a little finger and Ravan would be dead. But no, he chose to do it this way. He chose to create a Leela, a story, a something that we would all remember for time immemorial. And it is in that honor that the city of Ayodhya now has that temple of Ram that has been built. If you've been hearing about it, yes, it was done after hundreds of times when that temple was destroyed by Muslim invaders and rebuilt again. And this time, finally, it has been rebuilt in the birthplace of Ram, in Ayodhya. So look it up, the Ram temple in Ayodhya. And if someday you can go there, it'd be wonderful. Ram then offered his respectful obeisances to the Brahmins, the priestly order, the elderly persons, and all the citizens of Ayodhya. The citizens offered their beloved Ram flower garlands and danced in great jubilation. Together they entered the city of Ayodhya in the midst of a festival. Now in India, we celebrate Diwali. That is the time when Ram comes back. Well, of course, we celebrate Diwali here in the West as well. We celebrate all over the world. We celebrate, and it's somewhere in the months of October and November. And people put up candles and lights known as diyas all around their house. That is to light up their house, to welcome Ram and Sita into their home. Sita is Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth. And Ram is the supreme being, God. So we welcome them into our home on that day as they return from their journey in the forest and having killed the demonic Ravan. It is also in some ways the victory of light over darkness. In some ways it is the victory of truth over falsehood. It is the victory of good over evil. And so that is what is honored and celebrated. When Ram entered the palace, he offered his respects to all the mothers, including Kaikeyi. Kaikeyi is the mother who connived to have Ram banished. But he offered his respects to her as well. He had no ill feelings. He understood that this is part of the Leela. This had to happen. He offered respect to the Guru, such as Vashishta and all of his friends. The mothers placed their sons on their laps, grown sons, Ram and Lakshman, who had gone to the forest, and bathed them with tears, thus relieving themselves of the grief of long separation. Guru Vashishta had Ram shave his matted locks of hair. So Ram had matted locks of hair from his time in the forest. There was no hairdresser there. There's no way to wash your hair, so his hair locks were all matted. And so the Guru had him shave his matted locks and then perform the bathing ceremony known as the Abhishek for Ram, along with the coronation that would have happened at that time, with the waters of the 4 seas and with other substances, just as it was performed for the heavenly king Indra. Ram was dressed nicely and decorated with a garland and ornaments. He shone brightly, surrounded by his brothers and his wife Sita, who were similarly dressed and ornamented. He then accepted the throne of the state. Ram cared for his citizens exactly like a father. This is important to understand. You're going to now hear about what a dharmic king is like, a dharmic ruler. We have many rulers. Ever since we've had monarchy, and from monarchy we've seen communism, and from communism we've seen democracy. But one thing we've seen in common with all of these leaders is that they are proud, they are arrogant, they are self-centered, they're exploitative. They exploit the people for their own gain. Very often they'll take off with millions and billions of dollars. Very often they will try to exploit them in whatever way they can. I'm not saying everyone's like that, but we've seen lots of cases like that. From the monarchs of the ancient times who didn't care what happened to the people, like in the French Revolution, and all the way into the Russian Bolshevik Revolution. You see the same thing there as well. People were starving, and these monarchs didn't care. So Ram cared for the citizens exactly like a father, and the citizens, being fully engaged in their occupational duties, accepted him as their father. Here's some pictures again. This is the coronation. Ram, Lakshman. So Ram and Sita sitting in the middle, behind them Bharat and Lakshman, and in front Hanuman and Sugriva. Many people think of Hanuman as the monkey god. He's not a monkey god. That's ridiculous. Hanuman is the servant of Ram, Ram Bhakta, a devotee of Ram. And yes, he has incredible powers, but that does not make him a god. When we say God, there are 2 kinds. There is the supreme being, God, Bhagavan. That is the correct word. And then there are demigods. Demigods are not God. They're not the supreme being. They are empowered beings given different responsibilities to manage the universe. So it's an important distinction. It is said that although it was Treta Yuga, it felt like Satya Yuga. In other words, it felt like we were like living in heaven, so to speak. Because of the good government of Sri Ram, everyone followed the path of Dharma and was completely happy. The forests, the rivers, the hills, the mountains, the 7 islands, meaning the 7 continents, and the 7 seas were all favorable in supplying the necessities of life for all living beings. You see, this is a very important piece to understand, that when there is dharmic governance, when there are dharmic rulers, dharmic kings, the earth cooperates by giving good rainfall, by giving abundant crop. The earth is also an entity. The earth is not just some thing that you can exploit and take from and steal from whatever you feel like. No. We understand that nature is a living force, as are all the plants, as are all the animals, and they need to be respected as such, and that they respond as such. The plants respond well when they are taken care of in a certain way. So do animals, so does nature. These are not inert things. They are living. When Ram, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was the king of this world, all bodily and mental suffering, All disease, old age, bereavement, lamentation, distress, fear, and fatigue were completely absent. There was even no cause for death. There was even no death for those who did not want it. Ram took a vow to accept only one wife and have no connection with any other women. Now, during his time, of course, kings would have multiple wives. But Ram decided, nope, he was going to have only one wife, Sita, and have no connection with any other women. He was a saintly king, and everything in his character was good, untinged by qualities like anger. So, when you overcome lust, anger, and greed, you have overcome the three biggest enemies of humankind. And that's what, when we say lust, we also mean desire. It doesn't just mean sexual lust, it means desire of anything. Lust, anger. So what happens when you don't get what you want? When your desires are not met? Anger. And what fuels your desire? Greed. Wanting more and more and more. We're never satisfied. So Ram had overcome all of these. And he taught good behavior for everyone by his personal activity. So this is a very important piece to understand. That it's not enough to just talk and teach by your words. The greatest teaching is by your personal example. A lot of people can talk. A lot of people can say things. But can you do it? Can you live it? That's important. Right? And if you can't, then say so. Don't just pretend by putting on some robes or having some designation. If you are unable to live it, then be honest about that. And whatever extent you are able to, share that. It's okay. We're not perfect. None of us is perfect. None of us will ever be perfect. But the folly is to pretend to be perfect, to pretend to be enlightened when you're not, to pretend to be something you're not. It's very tempting. And there's a lot of people who fall for it, but it isn't good for us. The person who rises in that way will ultimately fall. They will never be able to maintain that situation. They will be found out. They often get arrested. They often get into some really hot water. And they give a bad name to spiritual teachers and gurus and so on. Mother Sita, on the other hand, was very submissive, faithful, shy, and chaste, always understanding the attitude of her husband. When people hear that today, they're going to think, what the hell? What kind of a loser person is this? Women have to be strong and they have to be like a warrior and they have to be tough. No, we've lost the plot here. We've lost our understanding of what the feminine is. I know women have had to go out in the workplace, and to be in the workplace, they've had to deal with men, and to deal with men, they've had to be tough and strong. Fair enough. I don't look down on that at all. However, in relationship with your partner, there can be one feminine person and one masculine person, and you have to make up your mind who's who. Unfortunately, what happens is if the woman brings home a very masculine attitude and deals with her husband in that way, then either he's going to be masculine and fight back with her, because two males, that's exactly what they do. You try to push one male around, he's going to push you back. Or the male is going to become submissive. And if he becomes submissive, the woman's not going to respect him. You see, it's a catch-22. So for the correct dharmic way to do things, it is important that women understand what the feminine role is. The truth of the matter is this: we are neither male nor female. I may be in a male body now, somebody else might be in a female body now. But we are not defined by this body. I have been in female bodies and I'm in a male body now. You have been a female who is female now, might have been in male bodies in her earlier life. Now she's in a female body. The idea is to live the dharma of the body you're in. Otherwise, you are at conflict with your own nature, with your own dharma. And when you are in conflict with your nature, you're going to be unhappy. You can fight me all you like on that. You can argue with me all you like with that. But you'll find that once you come into alignment with your body, with your nature, with your qualities, you will become more peaceful and you will attract more positive situations in your life. If you feel you want to discuss this, write it in the comments. I will take it up after I finish this reading, and I would be happy to discuss that with you. Mother Sita was very submissive, faithful, shy, and chaste. These are qualities we've forgotten. These are qualities we now look down upon. These are qualities that we think are to be laughed away. But these were held in the highest esteem. And Mother Sita, who is the highest being on the feminine, the partner, the other half of the Supreme Being God, these were her qualities. These are the qualities of the divine feminine. Thus, by her character and her love and service, she completely attracted the mind of Ram. Now let's learn more about Ram. Ram donated different parts of his kingdom to various Brahmin priests. He felt that because the Brahmins have no material desires, they should possess the entire world. Such an interesting understanding, that the person who desires nothing should get everything. I don't know if you've noticed this. The more you desire something, the more it runs away from you. The more you desire wealth, the more you'll find that you have very little. The more you desire a particular person, you'll find that they run away from you. And sometimes it happens that you're able to get them. Sometimes so you figure out how to get the wealth. But for most people, the truth is that whatever you desire runs away from you. We desire youth, and youth runs away from us. We desire strength, and strength ultimately leaves us. We desire to live forever, and life ultimately leaves us. Whatever we desire ultimately leaves us. Even the partner, if you get that partner, they ultimately leave you. You get wealth, ultimately you leave it all behind. So in the final analysis, everything you desire and everything you have leaves you. So Ram's thinking was this: because the Brahmins, the truly evolved Brahmins, priests, were learned and had no material desires, they should possess the world. Why? Because then they have no ulterior motive. They are incorruptible. And when someone is incorruptible and has no ulterior motive, such a person can truly take care of things, can rule the world and the people. That was the concept of the saintly king as well. He said, after thus giving away in charity to the Brahmins, Sri Ram retained only his personal garments and ornaments. And similarly, the queen, Mother Sita, was left with only her nose ring and nothing else. All the Brahmins, the priests, were very pleased with him. With melted hearts, they returned all the property received from Ram and spoke as follows: O Lord, you are the master of the entire universe. What have you not given us? You have entered the core of our heart and dissipated the darkness of our ignorance by your effulgence. This is the supreme gift. We do not need a material donation. Now think about this. Most people go to God wanting something. But what we don't realize is God has given us everything. This body by which we're able to function and do things, and the health that we have, the sunshine, the water, the clean air, such incredible things, beautiful flowers and fruits and vegetables and wonderful things that we can eat. All these gifts of God are here now. And we're ungrateful. We want more and more and more and more. We do not feel contentment because we're obsessed with greed. We always want the latest thing, the latest gadget that comes out, we want what the other person has. They have a big house, I want a big house. They have a beautiful car, I want a beautiful car. They have a beautiful wife, I want that too. So what have you not given us? Right? You have entered the core of our heart and dissipated the darkness of our ignorance by your effulgence. This is the greatest gift, when the darkness within our heart of ignorance is dissipated. How does it get dissipated? By hearing these words. By hearing such wisdom, by hearing such knowledge, the darkness and of ignorance in our heart is dissipated. And what does it get replaced with? The effulgence, the beauty, the energy of the divine, of God, begins to fill you from within. And it radiates through your entire being, and people who come in your presence feel it. They say this is the supreme gift. We don't need any material donation. You are the supreme Godhead who has accepted the Brahmins, priests, as your worshipable deity. Means God is appearing and then worshipping the Brahmins, the learned priests who have devoted themselves to God. Your knowledge and memory are never disturbed by anxiety. You are the chief of all famous persons within this world, and your lotus feet are worshipped by sages who are beyond the jurisdiction of karma. We offer our respectful obeisances unto you. After accepting the throne of the government, Ram ordered his younger brothers to go out and conquer the entire world, while he personally remained in the capital and gave audience to all the citizens and supervised the governmental affairs. During his reign, the streets of the capital, Ayodhya, were sprinkled with perfumed water and perfumed liquor thrown about by elephants from their trunks. When the citizens saw Ram personally supervising the affairs of the city in such opulence, they appreciated him very much. Wherever he went, the citizens, both men and women, being very eager to see him, left their homes and got up on the rooftops to see him and shower flowers upon him. They approached him, worshipped him, and begged for his blessings. They said, "As you rescued the earth from the bottom of the sea in your incarnation as a boar, may you now maintain it. Thus we beg for your blessings." Meaning, they're saying, if you could rescue the earth when it is sinking, please rescue us from this terrible condition of being human and take us back with you home, back to the spiritual world. And now it goes into the opulence of that place. You see, people think there was nothing back then, just some cavemen and so on. But no, here we're talking about 14,000 years ago. And it says here, in the palace of his forefathers were various treasures and valuable wardrobes. The sitting places on two sides of the entrance doors were made of coral. The yards were decorated by pillars of Vaidurya mani, that is a gemstone. The floors were made of highly polished markata mani, another kind of gemstone. And the foundation was made of marble. So that means they were mining. They were having all these things, and if you're mining, then you're polishing and so on and so forth. The entire palace was decorated with flags and garlands and bedecked with pearls and valuable stones shining with celestial effulgence. The palace was fully surrounded by lamps and incense. The men and women within the palace all resembled demigods and were decorated with various ornaments that seemed beautiful because of being placed on their bodies. Sri Ram, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, chief of the best learned scholars, resided in that palace with his pleasure potency mother Sita. Pleasure potency means, this is a very particular word, which means that which gives pleasure to God. The only thing that ultimately gives pleasure to God is his own beloved. Someone who is of his caliber, someone who is of his nature. It is said of Radha and Krishna that they are one soul in two parts, masculine and feminine. Ram and Sita are the same. They are one, and now they've taken two forms of masculine and feminine. And therefore, she is the one who is his pleasure potency, meaning she is the one who can give him the ultimate pleasure. And together they enjoyed complete peace. They enjoyed with all the paraphernalia of transcendental pleasure. Once while Ram was walking, now there's a twist in the tale. It's not a happily ever after story. Once while Ram was walking at night incognito in disguise, so he would go out to see, state of affairs and see how things are around the city. So he was walking in disguise. He heard a man speaking unfavorably about his wife, Sita. The man was speaking to his own wife, and this man was apparently a dhobi or washerman, washes clothes. And he was saying to his wife, "You go to another man's house, therefore you are unchaste. I shall not maintain you anymore. A henpecked husband like Ram may accept a wife like Sita, who went to another man's house, but I am not henpecked like him, and therefore I shall not accept you again." What Rama understood is that some people in his kingdom were starting to think that Ram had done something that was against the code of Dharma, that he had taken back his wife after she had been with another man. The truth was, Sita had never slept with Ravan. Sita would never have, she would have rather died than sleep with Ravan or become his wife or mistress. But it was ignorant, foolish people making such statements. Shukdev Goswami, who is speaking this Bhagavatam, who is the great sage speaking, he says, men with a poor fund of poor knowledge and heinous character speak nonsensically. And that's what was starting to happen. Men of low character were starting to be discovered and speak out their mind. And if such thing had grown, then adharma, the opposite of dharma, would have grown more and more in the kingdom. Ram would not have that happen. Fearing such rascals, Ram abandoned his wife Sita, although she was pregnant, and sent her to the ashram of Valmiki Muni. So a great sage, Valmiki, he sent her to live with the sage in the forest again. This is a tragic turn of events, and many people have criticized Ram for this. But the fact of the matter was, Ram was not here for his own personal gain. He was here to establish Dharma. He was here to show how a king should rule beyond his selfish and personal aims and desires and needs. Ram was so in love with Sita, he had cried piteously for her when Ravan had taken her away. He had become mad with grief. And yet, when this situation arose, that people were going to start developing bad thoughts towards her and were going to now behave in ways that were against the codes of Dharma, he said, no, I can't let that happen. My whole life is dedicated to this higher purpose of establishing Dharma. And so he asked his wife, with great sadness in his heart, to go and be at the ashram of Valmiki. Valmiki, by the way, is the one who wrote the Ramayana. That same Valmiki was present at that time. So when he wrote from what was actually happening. When time came, the pregnant mother Sita Devi gave birth to twin sons, who were later known as Love and Kush. The ritualistic ceremony for their birth was performed by Valmiki. Being forsaken by her husband, Sita entrusted her two sons to the care of Valmiki. Then, meditating upon the lotus feet of Ram, she entered into the earth. It is said that Sita was actually born from the earth, and her father Janak had found her lying on the field. He did not know where she came from. And at this point, when she left her body, she entered back into the earth, just disappeared from everyone's sight. After hearing the news of Sita's entering the earth, Ram was terribly aggrieved. Although he is the supreme Godhead, upon remembering the exalted qualities of Sita, he could not check his grief in transcendental love. Thereafter, Ram observed complete celibacy and performed an uninterrupted yajna, known as the Agnihotra, for many, many years. He then returned to his own abode, the Vaikuntha planet, beyond the eternal effulgence of the Brahma Jyoti. Beyond the light, there is this planet. I'll tell you more about it. So this is Sita with her two sons, Love and Kush. And that is the sage Valmiki. He's training them in the art of warfare. In due time, all the inhabitants of Ayodhya who had served and loved Ram also returned to Vaikuntha in the spiritual world. So it is said that when we finally become free from this earthly existence, when we become liberated from the cycle of birth and death, then we go back to the spiritual world. The spiritual world consists of the light, which I'll show you in the picture here. So it consists of the light, and within that light there are planets in which there are the different avatars, the different forms of God, have different planets. Like Ram has his own planet in the spiritual world. And the uniqueness of these planets is that there is no birth or death or old age or disease here. The residents of these planets have eternal forms, spiritual forms. And they engage in serving God in different pastimes, different leelas, different ways. In different planets, whoever is their worshipable form, worshipable avatar, they go to that planet. The highest of those planets is known as the planet called Goloka. I'll go back to those pictures again and show you. So Sri Ram, whose spiritual body is always engaged in various pastimes, has no equal or superior. Therefore, he had no need to take help from the Vanar army to gain victory over Ravan. I told you about that earlier. Ram's spotless name and fame, which vanquish all sinful reactions, are celebrated in all directions. Saintly kings and demigods, including Shiva and Brahma, worship him by bowing down with their helmets. Let me offer my obeisances unto his lotus feet. Anyone who hears the narrations concerning the characteristics of Sri Ram's pastimes will ultimately be freed from the disease of envy and be liberated from the bondage of karmic activities. So that includes you. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, let's see. Those of you who have joined on Instagram, please feel free to write down your comments, and I'll be glad to add them in here. And those of you that are here on Zoom or YouTube, love to hear from you. We have a great question here. What's your advice for a man whose female partner is often in masculine energy? Love the question. It is not an easy one to deal with because, or this question is not an easy one to deal with because there's so much of teaching to the opposite, that oh, that's a good thing, that women need to be this way. And the truth is that it's not working. It's not working for anybody. It's not working for the men. It's not working for the women. What can one do? And it is definitely a challenge. What you can do is step into your own masculine. The point is, unfortunately, women have stepped into the same macho kind of masculine energy that men were in. They hated men for being that way. They hated men for being dominating, controlling. Macho is the word, right? And now women have become that way. And it's a tragedy because then they're forcing men to now take on a more submissive role. And if the man does that, they're not going to respect him. So the only way is to reclaim your power. How do you do that? Not by doing what she's doing, but starting to move towards what would be called the evolved masculine. And the evolved masculine is very different from the macho masculine. The evolved masculine is a very powerful being, and you need spiritual power to do that. It's a very evolved spiritual being who is able to stand in his power and be a leader despite her stepping into this masculine role. The thing is this, that when you step into that evolved masculine, you will find she starts to feel safer. And as she begins to feel safer, she's able to step into her feminine. You need to be able to literally provide for her safety. That's at the core. And if you can provide that feeling, and it may take a while, but when you're able to provide that safety for her, you will see her stepping more and more into her feminine. It's an amazing process to watch. So I advise you and I suggest to you, don't retaliate as one masculine to another. Don't go into your feminine as a man. That's not going to help either. Step into your spiritual power. That means become detached from your thoughts and your emotions, at least when you are in the face of her attack or her trying to impose on you or trying to control you. Try to separate away from your ego. It's a lot of spiritual work you've got to do to be able to get to this. But the truth is that once you do that work, you're going to find it's an incredible place to live in. I've been practicing this for quite a while, and some failure, some success. It's been a process of going back and forth between failing and succeeding. But the fact of the matter is, I see more and more how one gets better at this. And for most of us who are in male bodies, it's very important for us to learn this, to learn what that divine masculine is like. We can learn from Ram, we can learn from these Vedas, we can learn through meditation, we can learn through various practices that are there. And I've been guiding men for quite a while now how to do that. So be glad to help in any way I can. All right, any more questions? Anybody else? Got a number of you here on Instagram. Thank you for joining there. Got some of you here on YouTube. It's so good to have you here. Okay, so with this we end the entire history of Ram, and from the next few, we're here every Tuesday for those of you that are new. Every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Pacific time and 10 p.m. Eastern. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care. Have a wonderful week.